question. What if?
And we're going to ask the question, what if we didn't talk about a show for an entire season and we talked about all of it in one go? Because this is the What If spoiler cast for the first season. I'm Will.
I'm Josh.
And we're going to talk all spoilers for everything that happened in the first official MCU animated series as well, which is pretty exciting. It's the first of many, according to all the rumors. It's kind of spoiler-free. Temperature check. How'd you feel? How'd you feel now that it's all over?
I really dug it. Like, I enjoyed most of it. Like, there was hit and misses, but the misses weren't even that bad. They were just like tepid, I guess. Just like very, very middle ground, kind of like, that was an episode.
Yeah.
I loved all the art style. Like, the art style is so interesting. My parents even said, they were like, the faces are so simple. Like, the art on the face, there's very little detail in everything, but you know exactly who everyone is.
Yeah.
But just in general, I had a lot of fun with this, and I can't imagine them stopping at one season. I would imagine they're gonna keep going and keep pushing forward with this, which I'm very excited
Season
for.
2 is well into production already.
Yes.
A couple of one episode from season 1 was bumped into season 2. Very apparent if you've seen the finale. We'll talk about it later. But an episode that was pretty much done, but due to COVID, they had to bump it into the next season. So that wasn't a weird thing that made no sense because for fun. It was an episode that we should have seen, but it just didn't come out.
Okay, cool.
But we'll get to that.
I was wondering about that. Yeah, that's cool.
Totally, it exists. We'll get there. We've got the spoilers for the ending of an episode, but that's fine. I'm totally with you. I think this is a really, really cool thing. I think that on the whole, like, just trailing off the visuals thing, I think it's really cool that they've adopted it's based on an artist, like an 1800s or something. There's an artist that used to paint people in this way, which is the kind of the simple features, but you understand who they are. It exists to the point where in the Thor episode, when they show the photos of Loki and Thor when they were kids, that's actually entirely based off this artist, like the pose and everything. So that's why they kind of had an old-timey look. It was based on where it all comes from.
Sick. Very cool.
And I think it's great. I think for me, it's like it constantly, especially in the action sequences and like the big vista moments, it feels like concept art. The concept art at the end of the credits, it feels like that it has come to life in a way that I've always kind of wanted. It's almost like the old Star Wars concept paintings from before the movie came out by Ralph McQuarrie. Rebels tried to do that, and they kind of did, but all they really did was just make really thin lightsabers, and they were like, yeah, cool, that looks like the art. This really feels like concept art come to life, which is really exciting. There's definitely like maybe a little bit cheap animation in a lot of areas, like lip syncing is never quite there, and like, whenever a character has to run, it looks like Woody from the first Toy Story movie. It's just kind of all the limbs lock up and they do that. But I think that on the whole, it's visually stunning. I think some of the stories, like, I mean, the original What If comics, if you've ever read them, they're a little bit silly. Like, they definitely come out of left field and like don't really. I guess the thing with the comics is there's no real continuity to that universe, whereas this is like taking from what already exists. So when continuity issues or storylines that don't really make sense pop up in here, they haven't got the excuse of it being a completely different universe. So there was a few episodes where I struggled to see past the weirdness, but I think, on the whole, there's a very jokey, light tone to everything, so it's like you can't really take any of it too seriously. Let's just go through episode by episode and we just kind of build on our thoughts.
I'll try and remember.
That's okay, I've got a list, you'll be fine. The first episode was What If Captain Carter were the first Avenger, which is of course what if Steve Rogers did get pulled out of the experiment early when he was screaming, and what if it cost so much that they had to just keep going, so Peggy did it, which I thought it was a little weird as a way of getting her into the machine, but that's fine. It was this, like, I think this is one of the weakest episodes. Like, now that we're at the end, I don't think I had any problems with it when it first came out. But as the series went on, it was more apparent that this is like the worst version of What If.
Yeah, a little bit. I felt worse about another episode.
Oh yeah.
which is the other one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean, because this episode was kind of just, it almost just pulled Captain America out and put
just Peggy
Captain Britain in instead. And it felt like exactly the same thing. It didn't really change all that much other than like, you know, the gender equality discussions and things, which are important to have as well. And those were pretty good, but those were kind of the only difference between, other than, you know, the squid and Steve Rogers being in basically in
the Hydra Stomper.
Iron Man suit, Hydra Stomper. That's the one.
It's just like the thinnest in terms of, and when we get to it in the finale, it also is like the least interesting universe, because it doesn't seem like much has changed, whereas every other universe has these like drastic, even in the episode that sucks, even though it's still a very normal MCU, the whole world has changed around them, whereas this still just feels like the normal MCU with Peggy Carter in the place of Steve Rogers. Which,
love the character though.
Yeah,
she's great.
Super fun.
Freaking great. Especially in later episodes. I loved her character later. Like she was a lot of fun. She was great.
She's great.
Episode was just, I don't know. They definitely could have done more interesting things, especially given the rest of the series. How divergent some of those got and how interesting the stories got. Yeah, I guess, and it's also the fact that they haven't, everything else kind of is pulling from somewhere within comics, whereas this is the only one that, like, Peggy Carter, I think she existed in Exiles, which was because she existed in Contest of Champions. Like, she was never a comic book character. They designed her and put her in Contest of Champions. She did really well on the stupid gaming app. So then when they were doing a multiversal series called Exiles, she was in that. And that's kind of the only time she's popped up in comics. So they didn't have much to pull from in terms of, there's already a take to play with, I guess, is the other element of why it lacks a little bit. But it does plant the seeds of what I think the whole show does, which is, I kind of prefer this to the original. As much as this is like a play-by-play of the original, of the first Avenger, a lot of the moments, I think, if this was how it was done, would have been more exciting. Like a giant squid at the end of the movie. Cool, because in the original, Red Skull's on a plane, and then he gets teleported away, and that's kind of the end. Whereas this is like a good, like, the fact the Tesseract gets bounced around, it's like a little bit of an Indiana Jonesian, like, we have it, then we don't have it, then we have it. And, like, that's a cool kind of idea there. And I think, a lot of the other episodes, I'm like, this is a better version of the Doctor Strange movie. Yes, yeah. I kind of wonder whether it was just like, you know, the early, like, these are mostly taking off the first episode, the first movie.
Yep. The first phase.
And the first phase episodes. And so they were still both trying to find their footing, and they were trying to make something that would appeal to people.
Totally.
If they went with like a giant squid at the end of Captain America, which is, you know, almost entirely realistic in a way and based on real world events and stuff like that, with a couple of like extra things, maybe a giant squid through a portal
it's a bit much.
Would have been too much too soon. But I guess on top of that, like, well, in addition to that sort of thing, I wonder whether this was such a similar episode to the original film so that it was familiar to people, especially people who don't know what if is and what it is in like comic form and stuff. Like, they don't really get it and they're exploring it for the first time. They're like, this is the idea. Like, we're taking a movie and we're going to put a twist on it.
Yep.
Here's the most normal version of that for you normies who don't get it yet. And now we're going to push in and we're going to start getting weird.
Totally.
But it's just the first episode is, really simple, just to get people in and watching. Like, if they started with something else, it'd be like, whoa, this is way too much.
I mean, it feels like a pilot episode. It's very much, setting up the little elements and stuff. And like I said, it's not by any means a bad one. I loved it when it came out. It's just where we end up at the end of the show. It's kind of like, nah, this is the least there's a select few that I'll come back and watch, and that's just not one of them.
Sure.
I guess
I wouldn't mind just going back and watching all of them with full context.
Yep.
Especially now, it'd be kind of cool to to see whether anything else jumps out. Kind of like when you go back and you watch the MCU again, you're like, oh, I saw that thing.
Little links.
See whether there's any links or anything that we would have missed, or
Totally.
More context that comes up that's better later. Like the Marvel movies almost seem to get better every time we watch them through. But yeah, I am very keen to watch this again at some point.
One that I've definitely watched once or twice already is the next episode, which was What If T'Challa Became a Star-Lord?
Yes.
Obviously, the premise here, Yondu comes to Earth to pick up Peter Quill, but they go to the wrong place, they pick up the wrong kid, and that's it. This is one of the ones that I think is hard to... I wish there was a better premise to kick it in gear, because there's just so much of what the whole relationship of Star-Lord or Peter Quill and Yondu was. When they got him, they wanted to eat him. Yondu protected him and became the father figure for him. Whereas in this, the idea is T'Challa wants to leave what is the perfect living environment on the face of the earth. He wants to leave that. And Yondu is also like, well, I can show you the stars, so let's bond. Which I'm like, I feel like Peter Quill probably had a similar thing where he's like, I want to leave the earth because my mum just died. Let's bond.
Yeah.
But I guess they wanted to eat him. It's the weirdest one, but I love the rest of the episode, but I was a bit disappointed. It was just Kraglin picked up the wrong kid. It was like, really? That's all we got?
Yeah, fair enough. That's fair enough. This, I think this episode came out pretty early on in me moving apartments, so I don't have a huge memory of it because I was so like busy in my mind.
Yeah.
I remember the main story bits and stuff of it, and I just thought it was really great because, you know, this series is the last that we have of Chadwick Boseman, from what we can tell, unless maybe there's like a little bit in next season's
there
episodes.
might be some leftover lines or something.
Yeah, based on where we know we end up. And, you know, Star-Lord has become more and more of a hated character, both because he's a bit of a dick, but also people more and more don't like Chris Pratt. Yeah. And I was a little bit worried about what this T'Challa Star-Lord version would be, but it's so nice that before Chadwick Boseman even died, they wrote the entire thing to be like, Star-Lord is essentially like the savior of the universe and this really lovely guy. Everyone knows him because he's really nice and because he managed to change Thanos' mind by just chatting to him. Like just crazy stuff like that. And it's like, that's such a cool legacy for Chadwick Boseman and his Black Panther character, who is already such a lovely person, like a lovely sort of character in general. Totally. It's so nice that they didn't go,
he's also a dick.
he's a bit of a dick. Yeah. Like he's still stealing stuff and whatever. Totally. But this, like, he steals stuff, but there is a purpose for it, and it's always for good. Everything is always for good. Everything he does. He's
turned the Ravagers, which are basically a bunch of bounty hunters in the normal strain, he's turned them into Robin Hood and the Merry Men. Like they're taking from the rich and giving to the poor. Which it's such a sick thing, and it makes so much sense because it's not an actor playing Peter Quill. It's still T'Challa. It's what if the greatest prince Wakanda ever had went to space. And it's great. And like it's even in the phrasing of T'Challa became a Star-Lord. He didn't become Star-Lord. He became a Lord of the Stars. Like,
it's very cool.
It's a great and I also just think, and I'll say, I think a lot of people thought it. I think it's the most interesting world that we could have, continued to see. Like having Nebula be like a Bond girl, basically, who provides like a mission and like that whole dynamic. And there's a dynamic between her and T'Challa for sure that, there's a little bit of romance, there's a little bit of chemistry between them. I just think this is another one where I'm like, I love Guardians. They're obviously my top 2 movies. I like this possibly more. Like, I like the dynamic that T'Challa has with Yondu more than... Because we never really got that dynamic, like, until he dies at the end of Guardians 2, between Quill and Yondu. Like, there's a cool thing at play there. All the Ravagers have their own personality in this and get to be in it a bit more. Thanos is really enjoyable. Like, it's cool to have a fun Thanos.
It's really nice, right? Yeah. It's really, really cool. If they do come back to this with the voice casting that they've done so far, I know that they will cast Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa as someone who will sound so
insane,
and will do such good justice to him in future episodes and stuff if they come back to T'Challa's character. The voice casting is just so good in freaking every episode.
Yeah.
And now that we don't have Chadwick anymore, I'm sure they'll do something great if they bring his character back.
Well, it is a tricky predicament they've got, because in the films, if they need to move on, if they don't want to recast, that's kind of what I don't agree with that decision. It's a very strange thing because T'Challa means so much to so many people. So for me, it feels logical to let that character live on with a new person in those shoes. It doesn't. Totally. It feels really weird to be getting rid of that character. But yeah, within this, they could easily, not easily, they need T'Challa. Like, if they're going to continue to tell stories of Phase 3 and 2 and put him somewhere, they need to be able to have a T'Challa. So hopefully they recast. And the reason that I also hope they recast is because there was entirely, and was discussed with Chadwick, a T'Challa Star Wars series was the intention. This was a pilot episode for a full run of shows.
Dang, that would've been sick.
So hopefully if, the right person is found to voice T'Challa again, they can, or recast in the universe, if that does eventuate, hopefully they get to do that. Because like I said, like this is a show. Like, this is absolutely a week to week new mission to do, some like cool overarching thing. Like, you can do Thanos actually is like, it's slowly slipping and wants to turn back and get the stones. Like, there's an arc that you can have with these characters. And yeah, I just thought, when I saw that news, which they talked about now the show is over, I'm like, please do that. Please do that.
Yeah, like, there's a couple of other episodes that I would love to see a whole series on, and it could just be like, what if T'Challa is Star-Lord season 1?
Season 1, yeah.
Like, and just have a whole series about it.
Absolutely.
But it's all under the what if banner.
Yep.
With its own season, and continue some of these stories and characters. Some of them end abruptly.
Yeah.
The zombies invaded, and then Thanos
is one,
and then he left.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like,
give me more.
There's some sort of really quick beat that didn't feel like a post-credit scene, but it just felt like the whole episode
we were just pulled out a little bit early.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get to a couple. But yeah, no, these first four even do have a nice end. The next one being What If the World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes, which is basically a murder mystery as all of the Phase 1 Avengers get sniped. Get cut off. And I think, our special guest is given thumbs up. I think that this is the exact proof of how this show needs to continue forward. Because first episode, whatever. Second episode was all down to being based on a heist movie. Like, that is the whole existence of that thing. This episode, based on a murder mystery. Perfect episode. The next episode, based on like a time loop. Perfect episode. It has to all be based on a theme or be riffing on something that already has come, because that's what is successful with this. It's putting these characters we've seen before in a situation that we're familiar with, and that's what I think works for this show. When there isn't that, like the first episode, which just doesn't have a point, it's like, it just feels loose and it feels like a waste of an episode.
And the other episode. Now that you've pointed out the genre types, there's nothing there.
There's no point. We'll definitely.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's what is successful amongst all these. But and this episode itself is just very good. It is the first episode. I love the Star-Lord episode, but this is the first episode where I was interested in what if could be, because it was taking the risk of killing Tony Stark in the first 5 minutes. Not much of a risk beyond this episode, because every other fucking episode did it. But at least in this one, it was ballsy. And also, like, this is the episode where we went into the Incredible Hulk and we got Mark Ruffalo in that situation.
In the film, like in the Paramount Hulk film. Yeah. So cool. Such an interesting way to do it.
Mark Ruffalo recording his audio in a cupboard, I think, because it was always like, this is so crazy. I'm just gonna it's like, where are you, Mark? Just come close to the microphone. It's okay, buddy. Don't be afraid.
Well, I will say, in part of this episode, he is hiding in a cupboard.
That's true.
So
that's true.
Maybe that's just where they
didn't give him the direction that when he's hulked out, he's out of the cupboard.
Yeah, he's not in there.
You're not in the cupboard anymore, buddy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this episode was so cool. Like just the slow picking off of each character in different and interesting, unique ways.
Totally.
Like they're all like mostly the story beats. Like, you know, Tony Stark, it was Iron Man 2 when he gets Black Widow injects him with the thing.
Yep.
But it kills him.
Yeah.
Just all these different like story beats and stuff as they go.
Even finding a way to kill Thor, which is so hard to do because Thor is basically immortal, but Hawkeye manages to take the shot the second before he becomes because he's just a normal dude. He doesn't have any powers at that moment, so it's the perfect that whole the whole setup of that, like the way Hawkeye gets downed as well. Like it's. Again, it's big because of how cemented it is in the familiar, but twisting it using that, you know, fun, unique thing. It just felt, and it felt well paced as well, because the biggest problem with Captain Carter is how much it's just retracing. This one retraces, but uses all the moments to tell the story. It doesn't need to retell you any story because it's telling a unique one, but using all the puzzle pieces. Super cool. And then, of course, the big reveal in it is that Yellow Jacket exists proper in this universe. Like, bad Hank Pym is bad, which was amazing. Like, we knew Michael Douglas was in this. To have him put such an incredible performance in, like, it's so cool. Like,
he was creepy as hell, man.
Yeah.
He was like... Yeah, he was like a Vulture level of like,
totally,
oh, man, this guy's pissed and angry and like he's on a murderous rampage.
Absolutely.
It was so good.
Yeah, it's like a great reveal. I don't think I realized that Sam Jackson was going to be in this. I know he was going to be, like, I'm sure he was on the cast list, but this, having him so present in this episode just reminded me how friggin' perfect he is as this central figure in the MCU. Like, he's such a powerful man.
I'm so keen for more, you know, Secret Wars and stuff like that, where he pops back in again. We get more of him rather than the such a minimal amount that we got towards the end of phase 3.
Yeah.
Like, just, you know, it'd pop in and out for a post-credit scene. That's pretty much it.
For sure. No, we'll get more. Also got more Coulson, which is nice. I'm hoping that means we're getting closer to Coulson popping back in. Little traces of him here and there. And
I'm intrigued how they're going to do that so late on now. Like, how are they going to...
Or maybe I'll save it because our special guest is excited. I'm going to put it in my notes. I want to discuss how I think he'll come back. Coulson's return is in my notes now. One of the other people that is, because we've discussed how great the named actors are. I mean, this person has a name, but Lake Bell is in this as Black Widow, also Poison Ivy in the animated series. How? This was the one that I was like, because the whole cast apart from RDJ and Chris Evans in terms of the big six were back. This is the one that I was like, she's going to have to interact with so many people. Like, if it doesn't sound like her, it's perfect. She is perfect.
It's crazy. It is so insane how well she just slots in. Totally. It's so good.
And one other voice that, amongst many, there was lots of returning cameos in this, was Tom Hiddleston as Loki. And the resolution of this probably sets up the Loki that's in the show that was President Loki, right? Like, that's probably from this universe, I would assume, because he's president.
I'm trying to think what happens.
Because at the end of this, as like pay for helping to defeat Yellow Jacket Pym, Loki is basically seemingly sworn into the office as president of the Earth. He goes to the UN and he's we're going to offer. So I'm wondering if this was one of the first. There's another one later on where it's like, this is from Loki. Like, this is that character that was bitten by Croc Loki. This is setting up President Loki, which is, I hope, I think it's pretty cool.
That would be pretty sick. Yeah. Great crossover between those.
Totally. Because it's kind of, they kind of don't touch the MCU, ironically. They touch it a lot, but they don't touch it in terms of pushing towards the future or the past. It's very much set in being a what-if experience.
Yeah. But very, you know, phase 1 and some of 2. That's pretty much all they really went for this.
Although the next episode may have ramifications for the future, which is what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands, which is a great premise, a silly name. It's such a dorky name for what this is. I think. So basically, you've definitely watched this, unless you're Emmy. The point here is Doctor Strange is unable to save Christine. She is in the car in the accident that forces him to lose control of his hands and not be able to do surgery anymore, which forces him to go to Kamar-Taj and all the rest of it. I think this was beyond this initial premise, this is the strongest episode. Like, what it does with Doctor Strange's character gets it ironically closer to the comics, but further at the same time. It's like he is the power that you expect from Doctor Strange, but pushed into a darker place. I think the issue with this is that Christine is just not this character in the movie. She's not important. Like, they kind of touch on it a little bit in that, like, there's definitely a relationship, but I don't know. And she like tries to console him and tries to be like, don't fall into this dark place in the movie when she is alive. But it's the one episode where I wish that like everything was planned in the Kevin Feige way, and I wish that Christine was this important in the films. So this did feel a little bit more linked to the main line. But like I said, you can overlook that and let this exist in this What If universe. Like, maybe in this What If universe, the thing that changed everything was that they dated in high school and they were lovers for longer or something. Like, there's a connection that lasted longer, and that's why they're important to each other. Because awesome, depressing time loop episode.
It was huge. I will say the sad boy musician in me did like the name of the episode just a little bit.
Yeah.
It hits hard. I can imagine songs being called that.
Yeah.
That's just me being sad. Musically.
Yeah.
I'm a happy boy, but sad musically.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this episode, it went places. It did some insane things.
Yeah.
It's probably the first episode that really stood out to be like, the watcher has to do something soon.
Yeah.
Like, this, I guess this was the one, I think I probably messaged you, because by the end of the episode, Doctor Strange has done so much to try and bring Christina back that he's just destroyed the universe, and it's just him left on his own floating in nothingness. To
be fair, probably driven a little bit by the Ancient One, by breaking the laws of time, by creating a split time stream of a good and a bad Doctor Strange, which is also something this episode finds time within 35 minutes to do, which is phenomenal.
It's crazy. It's so, there's so much in this freaking episode. But the destruction of an entire universe and the way that the whole series keeps harping on, like, the Watcher cannot intervene. I'm like, what's worse than this?
And we get there.
We certainly do. But it made me kind of go, something huge is going to happen for the Watcher to have to step in and not save this universe, but help in some other way. Like, something way bigger is coming, which is super interesting. But this episode was amazing. So bizarre. I feel like there's a bunch of references that I don't understand from different mythologies and things of, like, I think I've read some of them, like some of the monsters and stuff that Doctor Strange is essentially like consuming to become stronger and to try and get strong enough to be able to break this loop that he's in. There's a lot of references in there that I've heard about, but just don't understand. So there's probably so much more in this episode that it's doing that I don't even get, but there's so much already that I'm like... Cool.
Like I say, it's the most Doctor Strange has ever felt in terms of the universe as well. Like the hidden library full of all the knowledge. That dude, I can't remember what his name, but the one that the Strange is there for so long that he dies. That guy's in Multiverse of Madness. There's no way that he is not. Like, I've looked up the actor. He's got the same face. Like, he's going to turn up. There has to be a little bit of connective tissue there.
It makes me excited for Multiverse of Madness too, for like how weird this series got. now we know how weird
Terrified of that
can
movie.
get.
I was scared of Spider-Man No Way Home, but Multiverse of Madness is getting me real scared now.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. For the continuity stuff, it's like, man, they could get real weird and interesting and funky.
Sam Raimi does love his tentacles.
Yes.
But so this is a super cool episode where it obviously leaves off not just how much dark you're going to get, but there's a little bit of a friggin' Ex Machina, Doctor Strange. I've seen every future. There's only one possible one that will survive everything that Utah is doing as well. That's why he's not interfering. He knows where he needs everything to end up, and we'll end up there shortly. But
yes.
The one final thing on this is thank God Benedict Cumberbatch is in the show, because the fun he is having with this character, I don't think it would not hit the highs that it does without him voicing it. This episode also is probably the strongest one in terms of, I guess next one has everyone in it as well almost, but this one is entirely the voices. Like Tilda Swinton is back, Benedict Wong is back, Benedict Cumberbatch is back. They are all the real people, and I think that's what really solidifies this. Rachel McAdams, the face is questionable. Yeah. But like they're all back, and that's why like the scene of Wong coming in, giving Strange some tea, like it feels like a film that we haven't seen, or like a scene that we haven't seen, because they're all the voices, and the animation just does wonders for it all as well.
Yeah. And it's this one seems a lot more like honed in as well. Like there's such a minimal cast in this, and a minimal kind of concept. It's just like one thing. It's just like he just wants to break this loop. Yeah. That's it. That's all he's trying to do. He's going to run over here, get really strong, and then come back to this
one moment.
Exact set piece. Like this position. Totally. You'll be here for half the episode. This one point. Totally. Which, kind of... It's got a real good, like, straight direction, easy to follow, but it does so much. Yeah.
And one last other thing is the visuals is also that we get Kirby dots. Whenever they need to show powers, we just got Kirby dots, just big black circles everywhere. We're definitely going to be talking about it in the finale, but it's very cool. And it's what our special guest has also mentioned. This show shows how you can make powers look unique, which is really nice. Everything doesn't have to just be an image with glow on it or smoke. Yeah. Like everyone has unique powers and they all look very cool. Hopefully that flows into the mainline MCU as well.
Do we need to talk about what Kirby dots are for anyone who has no idea what we're talking about?
They're just big black circles. That's all it is. If you've ever read the original comics, anytime...
But what the reference is from. Because when you said that initially, I'm like from Mario, like Nintendo.
Oh yeah, fair.
Pointing at himself too. I think he's agreeing.
No, I didn't.
The special guest is agreing.
I hadn't even
bleep that. Can you bleep that?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
The more times you talk about it, the more confused they're going to be. It's interesting because technically the way the Jack Kirby dots were in the comics is it's actually the negative space. It's not black dots. It's removal of the image. Basically, it's whereas in this they're generally black dots. It's super cool to see in this, and I do hope that they find a fun way to do it. The Avengers game actually found a fun way to do it by being a bug where all of the effects don't work on Captain America's shield, so in place of the particles are just black dots, and people thought they were cool Jack Kirby dots, but in actual fact they got patched out because it shouldn't have looked like that.
Right. That's very cool.
I thought it was leave it.
That would have been would have been freaking great.
But it's telling of the game.
Yeah, that's sick. But yeah, like Jack Kirby dots, you would have seen them 1,000 times in Into the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse, for sure, yeah.
It's most of that movie.
For sure, yeah. But speaking of spiders, the one episode that he pops up in is episode 5, which is just simply, what if zombies? Nothing else. What if zombies?
No. What if?
And I think that this may be the strongest in premise. I think this may be the one that, like, it is hard to knock because it also is one that takes so much from the comic run of Marvel Zombies. And I think that is, again, what helps it. Either taking from a comic run or taking from an existing, like, idea in cinema is what really helps these. What if Zombies? Basically, Hank Pym, as it happens in Ant-Man and the Wasp, goes back into the quantum realm to get Janet and finds that Janet has been poisoned by quantum virus. just add quantum to the front of it, as we always say. And when they return, Scott gets bitten, and the zombie virus kind of just spreads from there. I don't know how. I guess Hope just shrunk and got away. I feel like she was present and didn't get bitten, but it's fine. And then the Avengers reform, which is an important thing that people just keep going, that doesn't make any sense. Because at this point in time, Civil War has happened. Tony and Cap aren't speaking. And a lot of people have been like, the Avengers don't exist at this point. What, you don't think a fucking zombie virus would reunite the Avengers? Like, they'd probably just be like, you know what, let's do something about this together. That is probably fine.
And also, this is a different universe.
Totally.
Maybe Civil War didn't happen.
Civil War couldn't have happened. Well, it did happen because on Captain America's arm, the A isn't there, and that's only present in Civil War. That's an actual truth.
Maybe that was never present.
Maybe he never, in this whole universe, he never had an A.
Yeah,
the letter A doesn't exist. Zombies.
That's it.
There's no A in zombies, is there?
That's it. He was Captain America. Merrick.
No, he's Captain
Merrick.
This is good. This is a good bit. This episode features someone stepping in the shoes of Tom Holland, who said, quote, I didn't want to do a impersonation of Tom Holland. Well, you did, because it's perfect, because...
It is. I didn't know.
Yeah, because Josh missed it. This is obviously the only episode that Spidey pops up in. The legalities surrounding it are very weird and silly in that he can only be involved in a thing that is under 40 minutes and has to be animated. That's the only way Disney can use him in an animated form.
Really?
Yeah, which is why he kind of couldn't turn up in a lot of other places.
Right.
Also, the suit is based on the Disney Park suit, which they own comparatively to the Far From Home, No Way Home suits. So there's lots of little things that they had to step over, but I'm glad that they did, because I think this... having Tom Holland Spidey as the emotional core of this worked really well, and I love that we got a dynamic between him and Wasp, Hope, because... They were
freaking great. I want more of that in the movies,
absolutely.
man.
We've got the Young Avengers coming. I feel like Young Avengers will be helmed by Wasp with that little team. So I think there may be, the What If writers saw a whiteboard and were like, what things can we do now that people will love even more later in the future? Because their dynamic was so friggin' great. Like the fact that, Peter uses the words of like Uncle Ben, the first actual on-screen vocal appearance of him being in this universe. Previously, he was on a suitcase that got thrown into Venice and never seen again. Not Ben wasn't in the suitcase. The letters BP were on the suitcase.
Yes.
But yeah, I think all the dynamics in this are really good. A lot of people have criticized the humor of this because, Hope blows up Sharon Carter and then is like, Sharon's on me, which, like, it's funny. Like, the MCU is funny.
Yeah. It is.
Zombieland, which is what this is taking from very heavily in terms of the opening Peter Parker little montage. All the rules. It's fine. And also, if you've already seen you've seen Iron Man die, the way a lot of people cope is humor. So you can
totally. That's the whole point of like Spider-Man's quips. He's having a hard time.
Absolutely.
So he makes jokes. That's the whole point.
The whole bit.
Back on I guess the relationship between Wasp and Spidey, I almost wonder whether that is like, Peter Wasp and Janet is probably the same age as like Aunt May. In this universe.
Yeah, totally.
So it's probably like he's almost
Surrogate.
just treating it like a surrogate mother aunt sort of vibe in that, and that's why they get along and they mesh so well.
Totally.
But I loved the humor in this. This was so much fun.
Absolutely.
The like anytime there was humor in like a battle sequence, especially I loved Winter Soldier in the train.
Yeah.
He had some great beats.
Yeah.
It was just so funny. Like I think I laughed out loud at the Winter Soldier's beats here. Like his voice acting, not great. Not fantastic.
Yeah.
But it worked because it's just
he's so dry.
So dry and sarcastic and stuff. Yeah.
And then like in terms of the big comicness of this, when we eventually get to the military barracks, where we have Vision and Wanda, which is, of course, reverse WandaVision. You've now got Vision caring for a dead Wanda. In contrast, you also get which is in the comics. T'Challa being used as parts to feed. I think in the comics, it's Hank Pym has a T'Challa that he's feeding to Hope. Or Janet, sorry, in the comics.
Right.
He's taking, and specifically has taken off a leg when we eventually get to it. So the entire visual presentation of T'Challa in this is lifted straight from the original Kirkman run of the comics, which is really cool.
Sick.
Like, I legitimately, because I love those comics, when I heard T'Challa's voice, firstly, I didn't know, I skipped the intros so I don't see any names. I didn't know Chadwick is in this episode. So when I heard his voice, I was like, holy shit. And then I realized it's the thing. They're doing the comics, which is really cool.
Yeah. Very, very cool. It's great. And the concepts of the superhero zombies in general for this, like especially the final few that you see, is so good. Like the Scarlet Witch zombie was freaking terrifying.
Yeah.
Like the fact that she is already, the most powerful being on the planet.
Yeah.
And then is just like a murderous, insane woman.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. And then like I loved it was Hope. Hope, like giant Hope.
Yeah.
Giant wasp.
So sad.
Is becoming zombified, and then that whole thing's just terrifying and weird and
throws a Hulk at the plane to try and stop them. They've just pinged off the wing. So good. Ruffalo also, again, puts in a great performance in this. He's good fun, which I'm glad that he's... Again, there's so many voices that I'm glad and characters I'm glad they chose for this. And setting it in that Infinity War period, I think was a really, really good choice. Like, even giving us the Banner not being able to Hulk out and all that kind of stuff. Yep. It did the better resolution than what happened in Endgame.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course Hulk wouldn't be like, yeah, all right, I'll help you. Like, this is a problem. Come out.
Yeah. And we haven't spoke about him too much yet, but we got Scott Lang. Scott Lang as a head. Just a head.
Just making dad puns the whole thing.
That's it. It's pretty good to start with, and then it just kind of gets a
little bit grating.
A little bit off and annoying, and it's like, all right, just chill.
Yeah, don't say Wingardium Leviosa or whatever he does when he's flying with the cape. We get it. It's okay.
But he's fun. He's like, man, just halve the amount of jokes and things that he needed to say. Yep. It's all good.
It's like what we'd heard the producer said. Basically, he was scheduled for like a half-hour booking and he was there for 2 hours. And so it's very clear that he just kept talking, and they had so much material, they were like, we'll just put it all in, I guess.
Yeah, why not?
But yeah, really cool, solid episode. Like you said, ends up in a place that's quite wild, which is Thanos is either Wakanda or New York. People haven't been able to determine, because it wouldn't make sense for him to go to Wakanda. He only goes to Wakanda for the Soul Stone, which is back at the base. So, but either way, Thanos has been zombified, which is pretty crazy. Will we find out what happens in this universe? Possibly. And possibly in live action. Robert Kirkman, the original writer of the runs, he just had lots of poo, just watery poos, has basically said that there's plans to do live action Marvel Zombies at some point in the future. Like, he has been approached. There's an idea of it. So, very exciting. It's probably something he shouldn't have said.
Special guest is keen.
Yeah.
Just for the people that aren't me, definitely.
I've mentioned it,
that need a reminder about this.
Yeah.
Robert Kirkman
wrote
Walking Dead.
Wrote Walking Dead as well as this run of Marvel Zombies.
As well as zombies in the comics. That's insane.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I had no idea. Special guest is trying to say something. One.
He wrote one other thing. An important thing.
Oh, yeah.
Invincible. He also wrote Invincible which is full of blood and gore. So he's good with that.
Can we put a voice changer on our special guest for that section? Yeah, cool.
Oh, I would say it would be so deep, but I might put it the other way. I might put it up, if anything.
Definitely. Do that. That'd be great.
But yeah, so we might get more Marvel Zombies in the future, live action, which is very exciting, and a very easy way to not have to rehire Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr. You just use, like, they've already done it. It was in Far From Home. There was a dead Iron Man in that movie. Just do that. You've already got the model. But yeah, super exciting episode. Next one, we won't talk about for too long, but what if Killmonger rescued Tony Stark? the premise here is Killmonger, who would be 18, is in the middle of the desert, where, admittedly, they get to why it all makes sense, which I was kind of impressed with how they kind of wrangled that together. But he was a young boy that...
Did they?
Yeah. Well, they basically say that he found out all the intel. Like, he delved into the Stark archives and knew that Obadiah was going to put a strike on Tony. And so he was there already. Because I was kind of, like, weird that he's in the middle of the desert. I like that they kind of found a reason. Like, he was doing a lot of research beforehand. But basically, he saves Tony from a nuke by holding it and throwing it. At this point, he's got no part. He hasn't got panther juice in him. He just threw a nuke away, which is weird. This is the episode that I think the discrepancies really fell hard on it. One that you mentioned that I hadn't even considered was the tattoos when he takes off his shirt.
Yeah, his scars. He's got all the scars, but this is nearly 10 years prior.
Yeah, it's like he hasn't killed that many people yet.
Or later on in the series, he hasn't killed anyone for 10 years.
He hit his peak and just kind of left it.
Yeah, did he kill everyone in 2009?
I guess so.
8, whenever.
This episode, it has no point. The single point it has is to get Killmonger in a place for the finale, I guess. But apart from that, it doesn't do anything to analyze the universe in any way. It shows, what if Tony Stark didn't become Iron Man and didn't build tech? And it's like, well, he doesn't change that much because you kill him straight away. He doesn't get time. He literally he starts to realize, he starts to become Iron Man in terms of realizing the destruction and everything. And then you kill him anyway. So it's like, there was no interesting arc going on here. The Pepper Potts voice actress was horrendous. It was a single monotone note, which admittedly Gwyneth Paltrow was a little bit shit in that first movie, but that is probably the one bung voice actor for all of this. Just it's so forgettable. It's so empty as an episode.
Let's just move on. Yeah, that's it. That's done.
We're not talking about it. It's fine. It's over. The next episode is episode 7, What If Thor Were an Only Child, which is probably the best title and the best dumb premise. This is just pure fun.
It's just fun. There's not much to it.
No.
There's not much going on, really.
We went to Australia. We went to Sydney. We went to the Harbour Bridge.
We did.
It's, I don't think they realised that Hemsworth was born in Melbourne, but that's fine. Technically, you probably should have gone to Melbourne or Byron Bay to really have a fun Chris Hemsworthian reference, but it was good for us that grew up in Sydney.
And what the rest of the world wouldn't really pick up and be like,
he swims through the Yarra.
Yeah, totally. If they went to Melbourne, there's nothing that visually iconic in Melbourne. You have to go to the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. Those are the two things. Those are the only two things that I can even think of in Australia that the rest of the world
Uluru, but it doesn't have much of a... Admit it, I was going to say it doesn't have much of a nightlife, but neither does Sydney. So I don't know why Party Thor went to the least party Sydney. He should have hit up Corey Worthington, put on some songs and...
It had a better nightlife back in Thor 1.
That's a fair point. Yeah, that's a fair point.
So time-wise,
it
the nightlife had not been shut down at that point in time.
We didn't have... Yeah, that's true. That's true. But the actual premise of the episode, Thor is Party Thor. Odin goes into Odin sleep. Frigga goes on a girls' night out. So Thor gets a band of brothers together with the Warriors 3 and Sif, takes him to Earth, has a party in Las Vegas with just literally everyone in the entire MCU. Everybody is there.
All the aliens. All the, you've got your Korgs, you have your Skrulls.
Yeah.
You've got Nova Corps, I think, turn up at some point. Yeah. It's just everyone's just hanging out. It's just a huge party on Earth.
Yeah.
The one place that doesn't know that aliens exist yet.
He does. He did.
They all just turn up right now and have a party. How overwhelming for humanity.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I love all the little scenarios that pop up in this. I'll mention it. I enjoyed Nebula speaking in this episode and saying "blow on these." I won't shy away from that. There's just plenty of clever things. Having your Grandmaster Jeff Goldblum being in this. Admittedly, he's in that episode that was bumped, but having him being in the show to say 2 lines. One is bubble time or foam it or something when he release the bubbles, I think release the foam,
of course,
is the line. And then the other one is whatever he says to the bodyguard as they ride around on granny scooters, because of course they do. But it's just it's just a testament to how like they've just got these actors on the rope, and they're just like, say anything and put it in an episode.
It's pretty much like, what if Taika Waititi could write an episode of this?
Yeah, for sure.
Like just a big freaking party.
Balls to the walls.
Yeah, because it is so much like having Korg and everyone. Like that is so much of Guardians, Thor 3.
Ragnarok, yeah, totally.
Ragnarok. Like it's just so many characters from that just having a good time.
And speaking of a character that has a good time, another Loki that is probably from the show, which is Frost Giant Loki, which got a little bit of tease in Loki. It was one of the variants they popped up. It's probably the same one. And we didn't mention Hemsworth. Hemsworth's having the time of his life. So is Tom Hiddleston. They're just having so much fun with their characters.
Yeah. And together as well. Like they are bros in this. When they turn up, they're like, there's a little bit of like, oh, they're going to do some fisticuffs. Is Loki actually bad?
Yeah.
But turns out that they're bros and they're party bros anyway, and it's just a whole lot of fun the whole time.
As Hiddleston has been saying for the past 15 years in every I almost said one of the words, press interview, he always was saying that Thor is a brother from another mother, and they get that line in here finally. I'm sure he was very happy to say. But it's not just a hangover play on that genre of road trip film. It's also an episode of Dragon Ball Z, because Captain Marvel is called in to take down Thor, and it's like,
I forgot about that part.
Totally.
I forgot what the problem with this episode was.
It's both Dragon Ball Z and also just Looney Tunes. They literally go to the middle of a desert and just have a fight with like the most stock, and not in a bad way. It just feels like a cartoony battle between two overpowered heroes. And the thing that like I did one of these ones. I was when they go into the atmosphere and the names of the different countries are just written on the it's so clever. It's so fun.
It's almost like Animaniacs.
That's what I'm saying. It's like Looney Tunes, totally.
Yeah.
It's I loved it. I loved the battle as well. Outside of being funny and dorky, it's also the best display of both of these heroes' powers yet. Like Thor has never been stronger, and Carol Danvers has never had that much like push, and it also
like ferocity to
it. Totally, and it's beautifully displayed. I like whether the animation or there's a few pitfalls in the design of the show or the budget of it. None of the fights fall apart. They're just stunning displays of these heroes just coming together or apart. But yeah, it's super cool episode, super fun. I like that we get more Howard. I hope that we get a Howard-centric episode, Howard the Duck, next season. I love it. I love that he gets married to Darcy. It's just so stupid. It's so stupid.
But it makes so much sense at the same time.
Absolutely.
Like, if anyone was to marry Howard the Duck, it would be freaking Darcy.
Absolutely. It's so
good.
But yeah, it's definitely the episode where you watch it and you're like, well, the watcher doesn't need to step in here, until you get to the end of the episode where we get our first appearance of Infinity Ultron as he comes through a rift. It's so funny as well, because it is just so over the top of just love, romance music on a very happy Thor, and then the watcher's just like, the fuck is that? And it just pans back, and it's the end of the universe, basically.
Yep, pretty much. I think one comparison I realized as I was watching these, like especially this episode, I think hit the hardest in this thought, was it always ends badly, which made me realize this is essentially just Marvel's Black Mirror. Yeah. Like that's all Black Mirror ever is. It's like, what if this thing? Yeah. And it's never going to end well. It's just Black Mirror. That's all this is.
We need some more positivity, because the what if that's not the point of what, and it's fine. It all leads to it for a reason. But the point of what if is not to be depressing. Some of them are just fun jaunts through a universe.
Yeah, which this almost entirely is.
Absolutely.
Right until that one point.
Yeah.
And even that part, you're like, ooh. Like it's not dark and depressing. It's kind of like, what just happened?
What's
that's
that?
cool. I want to know more about that. And it's more intriguing, but it does end up kind of being a bit dark.
A little bit dark. In episode 8, What If Ultron Won? Which is basically the correct way to make the film Age of Ultron, I guess. It's what if Ultron had an age, basically. Yeah, I don't know, I can't remember what the change was. I guess it's just that Ultron keeps the Vision body and puts himself inside it. The Avengers never get Vision back, I think, is the change in this.
Like they fail to get it or something.
Like the truck gets away when they were heisting the Vision body.
Is that it?
I think that's it, because it's just Vision is entirely Ultron in this universe. There's no Jarvis. So again, it's the best. Often the best episodes have the most troubled what ifs. It's like the rest of it's great. The how is sometimes a little bit vague. Even in the murder mystery one, the how is Hope joined S.H.I.E.L.D. when she was younger. That entirely happens off screen, and so it's not really explained. Like, unless this is one of those ones where it's like, unless you understand the MCU, like getting angry at a thing that says Hope probably doesn't make sense to you. Like, the big reveal of Hank being the villain only makes sense if you know who Hope is.
Yeah, totally. And I guess back to that one. It's not a murder mystery that you can solve, which is a little bit annoying.
Yeah. It's Oh, I will point to the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes films, because those are just not, you're supposed to, like you say, you want to be able to solve them or be along with the detective as you get all the clues. In those movies, there's no clues till at the end. He's like, I noticed this, and this, which weren't at all relevant, and these are scenes that you never even saw in this movie. Whereas at least in this, in the murder mystery episode, everything happens. It's just, you can't see Ant-Man. He's just very small.
Yeah. There's an explanation for it.
Yeah.
But you could.
Well, but they also do a good, like, hope, or like this thing happens that's so minuscule. So there's definitely seeds, but it's definitely it's not as on the nose.
Maybe if I watched it again, I'd pick up and be like, oh yeah, there it is.
The bit where Nick Fury sits in the car and says hope 6 times was definitely I kind of got it at that point.
Fair.
But in this episode, Ultron wins. He kills Tony Stark once again, because Tony Stark just can't stay alive in these episodes. Somehow, I guess because the only Avengers that were in that room were everyone except for Black Widow and Hawkeye. They're the only Avengers that have survived from that core team. I don't know what. I guess Wanda and Quicksilver just died because they're not anywhere to be seen. Again, it's what if. There's lots of things that might just have never happened. But I
guess they never found.
Well, I guess the twin. Yeah, well, the twins were at where the scepter was, so the twins are intrinsically linked to the plot of the original Age of Ultron. But I guess they just went into hiding. They never went to see Ultron, I guess.
Yeah, they never got him, and because they weren't at the big foundry with Claw.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
With that whole thing in this episode. Like, they weren't there where, like, that's where...
That's true, yeah.
Wanda, like, does
the stuff. Does the plot of Age of Ultron.
That's it.
But yes, in this one, Ultron exists. He thinks, I'm going to slowly kill the planet. I'll take my time, but I'm going to do it. And then once he has done it, Thanos turns up because he's got all the stones. And Vision's like, hey, lol, cut you in half. I can do that.
So quick. so quick.
I think just having Josh Brolin in the show earlier made you go, oh, they're going to have a face-off.
It would have been cool for them to have maybe a bit of back and forth dialogue, like an Ultron to Thanos conversation. Could have been super interesting. But yeah, it's so quick. This is just like, what's this?
Yeah.
Like, no time.
He doesn't even think.
Straight in half. No, crazy.
And then just chucks all the stones on him, and he's got the full power of the gauntlet, and then goes around the galaxy. A little bit of a discrepancy. He goes to the Sovereign to take down that place. Gamora is there fighting with the Guardians. Couldn't have happened if Thanos had to throw her off for the Soul Stone, but that's fine. I guess he threw Nebula, who he didn't love. But There's a little grey area there. Thanos doesn't love anyone. So who has he got to throw off to get that Soul Stone? But it's fine. It's fine. We can gloss over that. Also, it's technically 2015. That thing happens in 2014. The timelines don't actually line up.
That's right.
There's a lot
of
movie
releases don't. Yeah. So maybe,
There's a lot of things. Also, technically, to get the Power Stone, Thanos decimated Xandar. We go to Xandar, and Xandar is totally fine. So there's a lot of things in terms of where did Thanos get the stones, if not the way he got them in the original timeline. They could have just not gone to these planets, and we wouldn't have had these questions, but they did. It's
true. It's fine.
But Ultron goes around, just destroys everything that has ever existed in our timeline. But before that happens, I guess, we're also on Earth with Black Widow and Hawkeye taking out some Ultron drones, which was really cool. This almost felt like elements of Old Man Hawkeye, Old Man Logan universe, in like the dying days of the planet kind of thing, which was cool. It was cool to see. I hope they just do that next season, though. Give us an Old Man Hawkeye run.
Yeah. And kind of, mixed in with a little bit of Budapest, like them kind of fighting together. We actually get to see them, just the two of them, fighting together, trying to survive against an army.
The cloak of hiddenness, invisibility. That's what I was trying to think of. Hawkeye has a cloak of invisibility. Wherever that came from, that's fine. Yeah. We can deal with that. He also has a Bucky arm, which is interesting.
That thing's weird.
Yeah.
What a bizarre addition to any of this.
I can only assume when he was cutting his Mohawk eye, he slipped and just cut off his whole arm. That's how that happened.
In that whole thing, I was kind of thinking like Age of Ultron is the movie where they graft like fake flesh back to him.
Yep.
So I'm like, I guess something worse could have happened to him, and then they just had to graft a whole arm back onto him.
They blew off his arm. It's also a reference to Phase 2. Phase 2 was all about arms getting cut off. Like in that movie, you've got Claw's arm coming off. There's like, I think Loki or Thor's arm gets cut off in Thor the Dark World. Every single movie, because that's a reference to Empire Strikes Back, which is the number 2 movie in Star Wars.
Of course.
Hand gets cut off. It was a thing they were having fun with during Phase 2. So it's cool that in this, they kept that going with Hawkeye's arm. Because I think... No, you got Doctor Strange and stuff. I was going to say this is the only Phase 2 movie. But they kept that tradition going. There's also just a lot of Star Wars references in this. Like Hawkeye says, the Death Star plans are not in the main computer and stuff like that. So there's just a lot of Star Warsian stuff throughout this episode. Yep. I like that this is the one where the Watcher is like, I've got to do something. And the thing that he's got to do is tell them about a box. Like it's not save an entire universe. It's just, I could tell them where that box is right now. No, not that one.
He's so fun in this. He's so fun. There's such an urgency to everything that he wants to do.
Yeah.
And he's so like freaking out. He's the most cartoony character in this whole series in this episode. Because he's just like, he's biting his lip and he's like, just look over there. It's so fun. It's so good. Oh man. And it's so funny knowing that character in other things because he's just not
he's very
that
straight,
much of an animated character. Yeah. He's just very straight, very monotone, very everything everything makes sense and it's like logical stuff. And then this is just like, oh no. You got to do this thing. Come on.
So much fun.
Come on, guys. You don't give up.
Yeah, totally.
So good. Yeah. It's so good.
And there's also, I like that Nat gets the Red Guardian shield on this. This is cool little references. A shield that doesn't even turn up in the Black Widow movie. So that's quite funny. It was in all the marketing and I assume they thought it would turn up. In actual fact, this is the first time we see the shield in the MCU, which is quite ironic. It was in all the marketing. He never has it. He uses Taskmaster's shield in all the fights. He never has his own shield.
Oh my goodness.
Very bizarre.
What?
Very bizarre.
That's so weird.
Because it's so it's definitely a Mandela effect. It definitely feels like he has the shield.
Yeah.
It's not in the film at all, which is crazy.
That's bizarre. My goodness.
But yeah, I like that. And I like that Widow, this is the moment where Marvel becomes self-aware, and because she's like, "Is my collar?" and he's like, "Now is not the time to joke." And it's like, cool, all right, we're in the deep end here. This is a dark moment. I like that Zola's still alive, which could mean that Zola will probably turn up in a Sam Wilson-led Captain America movie. We might get some Dimension Z stuff, maybe. Probably not.
Insane.
But
that was there's all the stuff in this was really, really cool. Like the fact that they're like, there's no one left. Everything else is destroyed. You are literally the last Zola. So good luck. If you don't help us out, you will be the last Zola.
Yeah.
There will be no more.
Totally.
You're done.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay.
I guess I can do this. And I like that it's not an additional twist. It's not he's doing it and then he's going to take over and be evil. It's like, no, he's a computer. He's logically just like, no, I need to help here. I've got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And we get a Hawkeye version of Endgame. Hawkeye sacrifices himself, which was really cool. Any hero moments for Hawkeye is never a bad thing in our books.
Not at all. So good.
But and then we just roll through a fight with the Watcher and Ultron all powered up. That's like when the Watcher gets into his Super Saiyan outfit. I don't know if that's in the comics. I feel like it has to be, otherwise people will be very like confused and angry because it's so mad.
Yeah, I don't know, but their fight was sick.
Yeah.
It was like, again, reminiscent of Thor and Captain Marvel.
Yep.
Their fight through planets, but this one's through universes. Like different universes.
One of which
insane. So fun.
Was the Star Wars universe.
Was it?
They go briefly through a lava planet, and in the distance it's Mustafar, and in the distance you can see Darth Vader's castle as well. So, just
holy crap! What?
Which is pretty.
That's
cool.
Insane. So
Felucia, totally our special guest. Felucia pops up at one point. It's fun.
What's Felucia?
It's the
I don't
plant.
recognize Felucia.
There was ones with like huge plants for a brief moment as well. But it was the one where the blue lady got shot. If you remember episode 3. That's out there for you.
Okay.
But but it's funny because the writers have basically said they wanted to have Luke Skywalker in this and like have real big crossovers, and Marvel and Disney were like, we're not doing that. So this was a fun like.
Why not? Why not do that?
I think once we have What If Star Wars, which I'm sure is minutes away from being greenlit after the success of this and Star Wars Visions, I'm sure we'll get there. I'm sure. Season 3 of this will have a big old Star Wars crossover. That'd be great. Happen.
Like I guess this sort of the crossover you've just mentioned, and once again in the last 5 minutes blown. I guess that's a pretty good crossover to already have. Like that's
it's nice and subtle. Like imagine the what if you could have it'd be like all the characters that are already in here. You have Mace Windu with a purple lightsaber. He's already there. It's Nick Fury.
That would be great. That'd be so sick.
They've got things to do there. They got things.
Nice.
But and then one of the other universes we trek to is probably the Ultimate Universe, because in the background you got President Steve Rogers swearing in, which is a thing I think in the Ultimate Universe.
Swearing in. Yep.
And it was just cool. It was cool to see a bunch of things that maybe are setups for the future of the series as well. Like we may get an Ultimate Universe What If episode once there's a Miles Morales in the universe. Maybe that's the kind of things we'll be doing. And that pretty much leads into the finale with all the things that have been going wrong in the multiverse.
Hang on. I think I need to intervene before we get into this final episode.
Ooh.
Who is that?
Have we been chosen?
I think we've been chosen.
I've been watching this whole time.
Whoa!
Oh, there he is!
I've always aspired to be Jeffrey Wright, so this is good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You have the voice. You got the
I do.
solid,
I've got the
voice.
tone of voice. So,
so good.
I will just say, just on Jeffrey Wright, he has some real, I love him in the entire show. He has some really weird vocalizations sometimes of some of the lines. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I've never heard him like that before. I've never really seen him as like that kind of comedic actor. So it was very fun.
Animated as a man.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Speaking of him, he as his other character from Westworld, Bernard, gets a mention at the start of this episode by a widow. She says, "Bernard in accounting. What about him?" So there's a quick little drop of Bernard.
That's all right. Yeah. That's exactly what I thought of. And I'm like,
cool.
what a weird reference.
So this is not really this is the thing that kicks this episode off. The whole premise of this one is, of course, the Watcher, Ben. In the end there, he's bringing together the Guardians of the Multiverse, which is basically a character per episode from the rest of this show. and each one kind of steps through where they kind of were left or what they're currently up to in the universe. And just to get one little more ounce of Captain Carter hate, this was the worst way this episode could have opened. I hated this so much. I hated the retread of the Winter Soldier. It was like, in the same way that the other one was beat for beat for the first Avenger, this was just beat for beat the start of the Winter Soldier, and it just reminded me of how much I don't like the Captain Carter universe, and it was just a very sour way to begin this. I was hoping when she landed, maybe they'd picked another villain apart from Batroc, or they were going somewhere else, but when I heard the VO of the whatever Widow says, which is beat for beat how the Winter Soldier film opens, I got a guttural, like, my stomach turned, and I was like, no.
Sure.
Like, how are we here doing the same thing? I'm fine if the first Avenger happened, but Steve died. Like, the war was completely different. Iron Man existed in the 1940s. S.H.I.E.L.D. cannot be the same in the future.
You are British.
You are British. Like, this universe doesn't exist like this. There is no feasible way, and it was a sour way to start this. And spoilers, we get a mid-credit scene at the end back in this universe as well, and I'm like, I don't want this one. I
forgot so much about that.
Yeah.
It's literally out of my brain.
It's and just to get to the point of it, season 2 apparently will not feature any of these characters. Season 2 is all about fresh new ideas, which I'm super happy for. I don't want to come back to any of this, and I'll get into that later. But then we get back to T'Challa's Star-Lord universe, where he just shoots Ego in the face, and that's it. But this is, of course, Ego in his human form, so technically in that universe, Ego could still take over the world. Like, the planet still exists. He just killed Kurt Russell. That's all that happened there. Party Thor, having fun with a bunch of Ultron drones. I was happy that tailed through. I was because the way that this kind of timeline is going in the previous episode, the Watcher sees Ultron at a different point. Like, he knows of his existence at a different point to the end credit of Thor. So I was intrigued to know how that would all play out. But cool that there's some continuity between that, and Thor's screaming from Ragnarok came back. Just his intense scream.
Yeah, that was great.
It was very good.
That was great.
And we didn't mention that at the end of the other episode, the Watcher came to Dark Doctor Strange for the aid of helping to save the multiverse.
Yes.
I like that he went to him in his tiny little pocket dimension, and they were just hanging out there. That was my favorite part of it.
And the Watcher's just like, I need help. And Doctor Strange is like, of course you fucking do. You little idiot. I can help you, you silly idiot.
Yeah, so I'm not doing anything else, I guess. So.
I will just say, again on the Watcher. I'm not going to only talk about the Watcher. I promise.
You can though. You are.
But, I am the Watcher. They nailed what this character is in the comic, which is constantly like just there for some reason, and he's like, I just can't do anything, but maybe I should. Yeah. And so like the perfect casting, and also perfect like physical sizing, because I love how just comically wrong he is in every scene. He doesn't fit in any of them, and he's just hanging there with his arms crossed. It's
just real awkward in the corner.
And one of his legs is like kind of showing. It's very weird.
It's the Angelina Jolie dress.
Is it? I need to go back and see that. That sounds...
It's down there. See, you can totally see it.
Feel that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And also in this opening montage, we get Gamora and Tony Stark. Tony Stark in a Sicarian Hulkbuster armor, making an Infinity Gauntlet, and assumedly also making some sort of Infinity Grinder. It's an episode that we will see next season.
Yeah.
Might be a lot of Avengers Mech Strike comics. There's like a series that's recently come out, and I was like, are they doing like again, they kind of Gundams in an earlier episode, but it felt like they were doing weird like Transformer Gundam things again in this. So
yeah, true. Totally.
Maybe they just really like anime.
Probably.
Yeah,
I'm sure any animation studio is a fan.
Yeah, it had a cool his Hulkbuster sort of galactic spacesuit as well. It had a cool paint job. I like the paint on it. Like it had bits of green, I think.
It was green and orange. It was all Sicarian because that's where we'll be going.
Of course.
Yeah, totally.
The what if of this, it's not really a spoiler, it's the premise, it'll be the title, is what if the wormhole closed and Tony was stuck in space in Avengers.
Cool.
So we'll get that next season.
All right.
And also, tied in also is Gamora hunts Tony Stark. I don't know how that operates or why, but we'll find out. I guess because he blows up the ship, and so Thanos is probably like, "The fuck? Go after him."
She's still after.
It's better Tony Stark
Thanos.
premise than the Killmonger one. So.
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
I
do love that even though Tony Stark doesn't die in this one, he gets killed by the Watcher. Like, not you, buddy. No.
Yeah.
We don't need you.
His self-confidence gets killed.
You can imagine a lot of this show was very cathartic for me. Given my thoughts.
He's just constantly dying. It's great.
Yeah.
Great for Ben.
Great for me.
And then they all end up in an intergalactic bar, which it's such a like visually. I understand this episode and how it would look if this was the MCU. Like if we had just watched Phase 1 through 4, this would make sense as the Endgame movie. Like the way everything kind of comes together and all the rest of it. I'll get my thought out now. I don't like this though. I don't like that this all comes together. I don't want this. I hope this never happens again in What If. I don't like how universally this all ended up feeling. I kind of would prefer if everything is very separate.
Sure.
It just, and only because they tried to create Endgame in 35 minutes. And for me, I don't think this worked. It's too contrived in the whole thing. Like I said earlier, Endgame had Doctor Strange being one reality. This is the only way this can go. The reason we had Party Thor was because the Watcher knew he would be distracting, which is just a little bit silly. Like, I get it. It's a comic book thing. But for me, this is the one episode that really felt like a children's show and just kind of abandoned any of the strengths and any of the enjoyment I had before. I really struggled throughout this one. It was just action, a moment of no action, a moment where Ultron Vision says, "You took my soul stone," and then some other stuff. For me, this just didn't work for me.
I'm going to preempt assuming Josh has a slightly more positive opinion and say that I also hated 80% of this finale.
Thanks, Ben.
Interesting.
I loved almost every episode of this series other than the Killmonger one, which I think is pretty much the universal conclusion. But I thought I wanted a crossover, and then as soon as I got the crossover, I knew I didn't want it. Yeah. Because part of my problem is I actually think almost every time, except maybe the Thor episode, because they lead that into the next one, I think almost every time they end on like a really interesting note of you thinking what's going to happen next. And then in this episode, they're like, let's take them all out of that exact moment and put them in here. Or in Captain Carter's case, take them out of a different moment. Anyway, and it's just, to me, I'm like, I thought I'd like it, and then as soon as it just ended up in like what was essentially probably one of the worst fights in the show, in my opinion, it was very messy. I thought a lot of the other fights were very focused and had a style to them. To me, this was just a lot of visual, conflicting art styles and visual ideas going in one. Like, it was like flashes of black and white back to flashes of color and stuff, and because they were jumping between the universes, it got very confusing sometimes. The only part I liked, which kind of carries over from episode 8, I was going to say issue 8, but no, episode 8, is that Zola was the solution. And I think everything that Zola does in the previous episode and in this episode is very good. And I like that they tied that end together because it was tying up the Ultron story, which I guess is what the other ones did. So this kind of did it over 2 episodes. But all the crossover stuff, I really did not like.
It was a little bit silly.
So Josh, what's your thoughts?
Be kind.
I really liked it. Yeah. I had a lot of fun. The one, look, there's one part that I hated about it. I think it's just from the episode that I didn't like. I just didn't care for Killmonger at all. The little twist that he like walks over and is like, I'm going to take this whole armor. I'm like, I hate that. Just like they ended it. It's over. They're just gonna do it again. You saw them take down something that's much more powerful and more interesting than you are. You have no fight here. This is just
a bit
pointless.
stupid and didn't make sense. really.
For me, all
Yeah.
it was I imagine on that whiteboard the What If writers had, there was something scrawled on it that said, "We will never ever make Killmonger the Black Panther." And the writers went, right, we need to make sure the audience can fucking understand this, that Killmonger is a villain and he cannot be the Black Panther. So they went, look, even in this universe where he's like good and like maybe a little bit better than he was in the other ones, even in a universe where he becomes the Black Panther, he is still a villain. Like that's what this feels like, is just them cramming in and being like, we're never doing this. Get over it.
I want to let Josh get back to his summary, but just on the Killmonger thing real quick, I agree with you that that's what they're doing, and I think they're completely wrong in doing it. Because I think if they'd done an episode where Killmonger was just like someone else that influenced him or something, I was like, this person did something different, or his uncle didn't get killed or something like that, and have that character like actually be a good character, but like with his social views and stuff. I think that's way more interesting. And saying, no, he's always a villain, he's never gonna have that good turn, I think is boring. And I think that's why that episode fell flat. And then I think that's why this bit fell flat.
This didn't work as well.
And we should get Killmonger as Black Panther at some point.
I mean, Michael B. Jordan's amazing.
I think you're right that we won't get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Josh, get back to you.
That's all good. That's all good. I don't know if I have like quite an argument about why I enjoyed this episode to try and get people to be like, yeah, this was actually great. I just had a lot of fun. I like crossovers, no matter what they are. They're just a bunch of fun. There's some things that I am like that I do question a little bit based on the MCU universe that we are aware of, which is like in this, T'Challa calls him cousin, like he does in the Black Panther movies, but like they're not cousins.
Well, they are, because it's his dad, like Killmonger's dad is T'Challa's dad's brother.
They are cousins, but he wouldn't know.
Is this not
he got a
different universes?
Well, I mean, they're still familiar. Like they would still be. It's like he would know of T'Challa, and he would know. Although, like you say, Ben, the only reason he finds out about Killmonger in the movie is when Killmonger comes into his life. But Star-Lord, I mean, that T'Challa is taken as a child. He shouldn't know of Killmonger's existence.
Yeah. So just that kind of felt funny, the cousin thing, when they're not strictly related.
This is so interesting. I liked that. Despite everything, I quite liked the idea of, again, this kind human being trying to find the humanity of this person he knows it has that within him. And so using that cousin line for me was really exciting. They didn't do anything. Yeah. I also sadly think that this episode, I don't know how it would have happened, but all of Chadwick Boseman's lines were heavily like denoised and heavily garbled, and I think he must have been in a hospital ward. Like he must have been somewhere that was very difficult to access. And so I lost a lot of his lines in this episode because they were just not of the quality of a lot of the other ones, which is unfortunate.
The other thing in this is, didn't we establish in Loki that
They don't work in the TVA. That's
stones,
what we established.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I thought they were universe to universe.
But it's the TVA.
But it was interesting that they mentioned that they're specific to each universe.
They're playing with those rules loosely.
So it's like, it's a bit like with the absolute point thing in Doctor Strange, where it's in the Doctor Strange episode, where it's like, can we just get like a book where you explain your rules?
Yeah.
Just so we know what, because they're terms that are very similar but different enough.
Nexus points, absolute points. And like in this, they try to destroy the stones or at least harvest them. And like you say, because the machine was not from the universe where Ultron was from, it didn't work. But it's like, well, then, like, they shouldn't work at all. Like,
yeah. Like, there's a lot of like weird conflicting rules that are coming into this.
Totally.
But I don't know. Like, I think Ben was the one that also said like this felt like a very kind of stripped back like kids cartoon version of this, and I think I had that thought, and you loved smiling about it. Like I was just like, this is fun. I enjoy this kind of, you know, it was a little bit silly, it was a little bit fun. There was a lot going on. Like I understand like that the fight was messy, but I kind of liked how like grand and
Yeah.
intense it was.
That's fair.
And all of the crossovers and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I say all the time, I love weird stuff that almost doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I thrive on that stuff for some reason. I don't know why. I just love it.
Just like turning off, and in the best way.
I don't tend to question stuff all that much.
Well, we've got to remove that question mark in the logo of this
That's
show.
it. Please.
What if?
I was going to try and reach up and block it out, but
What if?
that's not how that works. I enjoyed it, but that's that's pretty much all I've got to say and ask, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I think part of my thing is that I totally agree that as a kids cartoon episode, it's cool. And I think a lot of this show tries to be that, and like some of the episodes are really good at that. Like the party Thor one, I think is good at it in a way. I mean, it's getting drunk and having sex, so it's maybe not the most kid friendly thing, but in like it nails that kind of tone, and like even the zombies one does a little bit. I think for me, the episodes that absolutely nailed their tone were the ones that went a bit darker. So then it was weirdly jarring to have such a bombastic, nonsensical ending episode. It's like, I guess in isolation, it's like a 7 out of 10 episode for me. Like, I wouldn't say it's a bad episode. Like I enjoyed it watching. I enjoyed watching it. I will say, I was just thinking my opinion probably slightly altered by the fact that I had my second vax that day and the day before, and I was not having a good reaction to it.
Yep.
So I was just lying in bed with a headache. So it probably didn't help. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit of a vanilla end to the show, which it always had to be, because this episode isn't a what if. It's not like a change to something we've seen. This is the first like purely original moment in the whole show. So
What was the title of this one?
What if the Watcher broke his oath?
That's
the name
right.
of it.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, it's like there's no familiar ground amongst this, apart from kind of, there's definitely elements of the endgame battle and the grapple for the stone and it getting passed around a little bit too. I don't know. I think what if, despite the grandiose insanity of it, I think the show is too small to have this. I think that the episodes that exist, the reason why we have an Infinity War or an Endgame is because we've spent 10 years with all these characters, or we've spent 10 years building a single universe. I just don't think, I mean, maybe after a couple more seasons of it, or if you want to do another big event, but not an event that mimics Endgame, that mimics something on such a huge scale. I just don't think they pulled it off for what it is, especially because, it felt like this show was, and it doesn't matter, it felt like the show was going to tie into the MCU in some way, or into Multiverse of Madness and all the things that are kind of happening. But instead, this is such an isolated thing that it's tied off at the end. Everyone goes home. Black Widow, probably the bit that I liked the most was that Black Widow goes to episode 3, the home of the Black Widow that died.
Yeah.
Which there was like a millisecond where I thought it was going to transition into live action, and he was like, "You're in the MCU again," and, and this is how we get Black Widow back.
Maybe it did, and then the contract issues are like,
they went,
we'll just take that bit out.
First Avengers, Captain America. Now it's the other one.
Insane. That would have been so good.
Yeah, there's a tiny bit, but I adored that. I think that was really cool, and I think that's a universe that would be nice to go back to, because it's such it's a unique one in the sense that it is the normal MCU to a point, and then all our heroes are gone, so who would replace them? Like, that's a universe I'd love to go back to and see what stories are within there. And I think that Black Widow is probably the best Black Widow as well. The Apocalypse Black Widow and everything that was kind of tied to her. Like, I did love her moment of riding the bike and saying "for Clint" as she fired the arrow towards. And yeah, I think that there's a world where this episode is actually a two-parter with the other one, a lot more directly. Like, it's a lot more just about Black Widow defeating Ultron, and maybe the battle, like, this is Will thinking. The battle rages between multiverses but doesn't combine. Ultron finds himself on each of the places with the Watcher, and we have a moment with each of the characters. Maybe each multiverse is where he picks up a different stone, and that's kind of how he builds that.
To me, it can still be the Watcher breaking his oath, because the Watcher can jump in at one point when all seems lost and is like, "No, I'll take you on," and have the fight that they had in 8 in this episode.
Yeah.
And be like, yeah, no.
Because that feels like what the resolution is the Watcher breaks his oath in that sort of, like, that fight probably shouldn't have happened in episode 8. Like, as epic as it is, it does feel like the culmination of the Watcher standing back and then doing something. It's just, this episode just didn't feel right. It felt like, maybe after 3 seasons of this show, this is the kind of grandiose ending to we're not making What If anymore. This is the final episode where we tie everything together. But
I think in the comics, like What If comics as well are, well, it's changed a bit now, but they are generally just like single stories. They don't cross over like that. Yeah. Now they're doing like slightly longer, like limited runs, but even those are still like self-contained to a particular what if scenario. Yeah. So it's like, I think the concept works so well as like an anthology, and this is the only thing that like we don't need to cross them over. This is just what if that happened. So I guess my thing is like, if you want to have your big multiverse crossover, put it in Multiverse of Madness. That's like the whole point of that episode, that movie or something. But yeah, so I think it's just like, doesn't need to be in there. It's definitely fun. I do agree with Josh in that ultimately it is a fun episode. Yeah. But it's like, it doesn't feel like it matches up to the rest of the show for me, which is...
And I've also just, like, closing thought on my thing is that it almost feels like it's ruined the future of this show because the Watcher's already interfered. It's like, why wouldn't he do it again? Like, you've already played the big trump card of him stepping in.
I will say there are other Watchers.
That's true.
I've been waiting for like the last 15 minutes to kind of go, I would be so intrigued to see him get in trouble, see what comes of that, and if this actually does affect these universes, the fact that he's done that. Now that he's interfered, and what his future with the Watchers as now the only Watcher potentially who has ever interfered.
I could be incorrect on this, but I believe, at least in the comics, Uatu is only the Watcher for Earth. So he's the Watcher across all the universes, the multiverse, but just for Earth. Right. And it kind of carries over in this, that theoretically he is actually all of them start on Earth at the very least, even T'Challa's one starts on Earth, and he mainly shows up in the background on Earth. So I think theoretically they could do that as well, where it's like all the Watchers from the rest of the multiverse are like, okay, no, we're not about that. You
can't be doing
that. But then it does it almost does take away like the rest of the what if stuff if you've got that side plot going on constantly. I'm almost like, give us a separate Watcher thing.
The Watcher show.
He can still be the narrator of this because it's a really cool way of integrating it, but have that story go on in a separate thing, which it could.
I would be worried that as much as that's cool, I just don't want it. I just want anthology. I don't want any ongoing story at all within this.
Sure.
I just think it's a complication that kind of muddies the show. But we'll see. We'll see what they like. I'm just very happy that the word is new ideas, fresh ideas for season 2.
Yeah, no,
I don't need to come back to anything here, really.
Yeah,
I think theoretically you could come back to a lot of them. Like a lot of them have interesting endings, but I'm also glad because I think like there's so much in the MCU to pull from for one. So in more stuff coming out all the time. So you can just keep making these because there's always going to be those little break off points.
The one thing I would hope for in season 2 is no more character swaps. Like at least not directly. Like Star-Lord and Captain Carter opening this series was a lot to be like, oh god, that's not the point of what if. It's not just what if this character was this character. Unless there's an incredible idea that they've got cooked up. Star-Lord worked. It worked really well. But I think predominantly it's what if this element changes? How does the universe cope? I don't want this person steps into this person's shoes in season 2, I think. But to kind of wrap things up, pick an episode. One episode, which is like, what's your number one?
It's the Doctor Strange one. I'm a big Marvel magic nerd. I love all that stuff. I remember when WandaVision came out, I was talking about all the cool effects and stuff and how they could be cooler. And as Will pointed out earlier, they are cooler here. I am like, this is, for me, I like the Doctor Strange movie a lot, but it has issues. I'm like, totally acknowledge that. And I think this is the best Doctor Strange movie we have got and might ever get.
Totally.
And I think it's actually a better origin story for him than that original movie was. I think the fact that I believe they mentioned Cagliostro and his like librarian stuff in Doctor Strange in the original movie, but the fact that they go there, they have the guy who in the comics, that's his name is Cagliostro, or like that's his like cover up name, but he's actually the guy. They have the big library. They have, I think you mentioned it when this episode came out, almost concept art level style in the background for some of this stuff, which is amazing. And it's just him like studying all the books, getting all these like tiny little references to stuff that'll probably show up in other Doctor Strange films, but like pretty much I think the tentacle stuff is Shumagorath, and I think that is the most linked to Multiverse of Madness that we'll get. But I just, as that being my like one of my favorite elements of Marvel Comics, this by far was always going to be the episode that stood out for me. Like to me, Hank Pym Yellow Jacket is a close second, but it's just because this is the kind of content that I prefer from Marvel. So I was so happy after that episode. I was like, oh my God, this is so good.
Good. Have you got yours, Josh?
Nice. I think I'd probably go for episode 8, the Age of Ultron episode. I just really liked that, especially just the Watcher, the amount of the Watcher that we got in that in comparison to anything else. And just his like hurriedness to like try and fix things and the way he's freaking out and stuff. And I loved, even though we didn't get much of it and there's not much really about it in general, I was hoping for more in episode 9, but the like in-between dimension area that he was in, that was just like a cool concept that he's just there and it's just almost like a bunch of TVs and stuff. And he's just like wandering around in this dimension watching, and Ultron just being like, I can see you in there. And then just like breaks through.
The beauty of that character is just so menacing. Like James Spader did it so well. I'm glad they got, I think it's the Red Skull actor.
Yeah, from Endgame and stuff.
Yeah, he did Ultron in this. Nice. Yeah. And like he nailed it for me. I think it's like the fact that it's just those little lines like you mentioned when he's just hanging out there and he's like, I can see you. What are you doing? And it's like, it's terrifying. It's genuinely terrifying. The other thing I have to shout out, again, I feel like I'm interrupting Josh, but I have to shout it out. The Galactus moment was so goddamn cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Very, very cool. But like Ben said, like it's just, he's a very good James Spader impersonator, like just very menacing. The lines that he said seemed very Ultron, like just little side quips or just little things that he'd say that just like give you a bit of a chill. You're like, oh man, this guy really means business kind of thing. He's really intense. I loved that episode. It was just intense, but a lot of fun. We got a bunch of Hawkeye, probably the most Hawkeye in the series, I think.
Love me some Hawkeye.
Yeah. And and he, we got his heroic
finale
moment. So just there's a lot to love in that episode. It's great. So go that one.
I like What If Thor is definitely close, but if we were to have the ETTO top 3 episodes, I need to come back to your optional pick, Ben, in episode 3, What If the World Lost its Mightiest Heroes, because I think it just proves exactly what this can be when it's not just fun and weird. It proves when it can be simple and a unique premise and a great utilization of characters that just were always B tier, like not B tier in power, but you've got like Nick Fury taking a central role, and it's really cool having Coulson very connected to him throughout. It's really good. The use of Loki is kind of like the most comic Loki Hiddleston has ever been. It's a great use of all the characters and just the world, and it made Thor 1 almost interesting. It made using a weird Mexico town feel like it has some sort of a point. I rank that highly. I'm with you. I feel like we should watch it in full and find all those little links. But I think those 3 episodes plus Party Thor are definitely like the go-tos for the future, for sure.
I think the thing I liked about that episode was just that it was like a big surprise. Because I remember the premise for it was just like, oh, all the Avengers died. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. And it like definitely like the first 10 minutes, I was like tuning out a little bit. And then it just gets so good. And that Hank Pym Yellow Jacket reveal is amazing. And who would have thought that the best, I would say, the best translation of a live action actor to voice acting is Michael Douglas, who struggles with live action acting sometimes.
Yeah. Scott, put on the suit, Scott. But yeah, he's phenomenal. And I will also say, just in terms of like the opening and stuff, I think it's the best paced episode out of all of them. It never spends too long in any places, and it never it just feels, it's the episode, and I don't think they ever hit it again. Maybe Doctor Strange as well, where I forgot it was a half hour. It felt like a 2-hour film, despite only having, only 30 minutes of content. So yeah.
It helps that it covers like 3 or 4 movies.
Yeah, totally.
In 40 minutes, it's literally just picking some of the most iconic parts of every phase 1 movie.
It did.
And just going like, we're just going to twist this, we're going to twist this, we're going to twist this, let's go.
It did make me remember that not a lot happened in those phase 1 movies, and they really ratcheted it up after that.
Totally. And yeah, they've confirmed that the next season will heavily rely on phase 4 stuff. So we're getting some Shang-Chi, some WandaVision, which will be pretty exciting.
I'm excited. I was thinking about it earlier. I'm excited for WandaVision What Ifs. To me, that has the most potential for really interesting stuff, just because we got like the zombie Scarlet Witch as well, which is the one thing that I'm like, I wish we saw more in that last episode. I wish we got an actual fight rather than
between her and Ultron, which is fun because it's like they've got that connection, although they don't, because in that universe there's no connection between them. I don't know, I'm not too sure.
Well, but they have the Mind Stone, so
they do.
Still,
that's true. She was seeing vision basically.
I do just want to see more of that one series. The zombie episode. I do just want to see more of that.
The thing you said about Robert Kirkman earlier got me very excited. I did not know that was possible, and I do hope we get a larger thing of it.
Yeah, it would be very cool. There's some cool, and the beauty of with all of this, where we're currently at with the MCU, is there's so many characters and so many worlds that can be pulled upon for a big event like that, or for something like this. So it's all very exciting. I think a solid first run minus Killmonger rescue Tony Stark. That's just a bad episode, and we just never need to talk or think about it again, I think.
The final thing I want to shout out: Letterboxd, please put this up. I don't care about your dumb rule with like
single
returning
season,
series or whatever. You gotta kind of break it sometimes anyway. Just put it up. Everyone has their MCU rankings on there. I want to put it on there somewhere.
What's their rule about it? What's the returning series?
It's generally like a limited run show goes on there. So your Squid Game or your other shows that only go for one season.
Yeah, but like Squid Game, not to spoil anything, probably have another season. So it's very weird that they just like, I don't know what's going on.
I think the rule should be if only one season exists, it goes on there. And then when other seasons come out, you can not include those or something.
I just think they should put TV shows on there or have a separate TV show thing. That's just my thought.
Letterboxd is amazing. If you want to, it's a rec for you, everybody.
It is great, for sure.
Do you guys want to shout out your Letterboxd accounts so people can follow, like we did for GG on the last episode of Catch Up?
Let me find it.
I am just Argen, I believe. ARGEN.
I could be literally anything. I'm the Doc of Who. So
there you go. I don't have it. I don't use it. I probably never will. So
It's fair. But before we go, I mentioned, and I slammed what I thought was the word Coulson, but I'm very proud of how I failed to write the word Coulson, because I wrote COPULSONS, which is compulsion. Not autocorrected. Just by fingers.
Okay.
I think this is my theory of how Coulson's going to get back in the universe. I think he'll be in Secret Invasion. Or Secret Invasion, not Secret Wars. And I think that there will be a funny bit, because he's alive in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. universe. I think there'll be a funny bit where they're realizing everyone's Skrulls, and they'll be like, oh my god, Coulson's a Skrull. And he's like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And they just never talk about it again. It's just, he's here, and he survived. And it's like a funny throwaway thing of like, but you're dead. And he's like, no, and they just don't talk about it. And because he's on that ship, there's no way he's not on that ship with Nick Fury right now. Like, I think it'll be a quick throwaway thing, and he's just in the universe again, and we just move on.
He needs to come back. He's so good.
That'll be hilarious for all the people that basically don't know that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a thing, and then suddenly he's back. Like, they've only watched the movies and the MCU TV shows.
I can't wait till they start pulling back stuff from those shows, and people are like, what?
Daisy Johnson is apparently going to be in one of the things, like Quake's going to turn up and stuff. It's cool.
Sick.
It's very cool.
Yeah,
But
cool. Very nice.
this was cool. Now we got to wait a while for a Hawkeye. There's Eternals in between, but yeah, good stuff.
It's like a month and a half, right?
Hawkeye's the end of November. We got a bit to go.
and Shang-Chi.
It's like
Shang-Chi.
that's yes, right. Because this is the longest between Marvel TV shows, I think, that we've got to wait for the next one.
Totally.
Usually there's only like a week or two.
Not
in
even
between.
a Star Wars TV show to tide us over.
Nothing.
It's nothing.
Got nothing.
What are we going to do?
I don't know. Murder in the Buildings finishes next in 2 weeks. It's like there's nothing
Damn it.
left. Harley Quinn. When you maybe Fandom will give us a good date for Harley Quinn.
Come on, Dome.
Maybe.
Come on,
Something
Dome.
for
Maybe.
us. And if you want to watch that, Dome,
It's true. Probably twitch.tv/ETTO will be live streaming. All these faces will be back. There'll probably be a Sam as well. There'll be 4 faces because that's the only boy that really cares about DC. We think
is
about
true.
DC, but he cares about DC. So we'll definitely be back with that. We're going to work out a timing because as fun as it is, the idea of the early one, it does replay in full at like 10 o'clock. I think Barjo is watching it live at 10 a.m. So I think 10 a.m. may be the go for sane people. Ben's not sure.
I like being an insane person sometimes. But
Yeah, Ben's in for 4 a.m.
Yeah.
What Will is saying is making sense, so we'll chat about it later.
We'll see. Either way, twitch.tv/ETTOnline, you can see all the madness of a DC. You can also see us on youtube.com/each to their own. That's where videos go up. This is where you can watch this, but if you're watching this and you only want to listen to it, you can just go to any audio streaming thing and search for Edo's Catch Up. You'll find it. Josh's friend from church searched it and they found it. Easy.
Yeah.
Wow.
They just typed in Edo. They were just like, oh, you've got a podcast? Is it Edo? And they just typed in Edo and went, is it
we were
Edo's
there.
Catch Up? They're like, I think that's your face. Yeah, that's you.
Simples.
Like, sick. So easy. There you go. Just type in Edo. You'll find it.
One day you'll take over that pasta bar and you'll get the top search on Google.
Yes. Yes.
We'll take him down.
So keen.
just
I
burn
need to go back there again. They were great.
Well, we're just going to wait for another earthquake. I'm sure they'll get taken out. Ben, where can people find you?
You can find me over at twitch.tv/ArgonTV. I am streaming there semi-regularly, doing games and things sometimes.
There's a bin. There's a bin there.
There's
the
a bin.
Argon bin.
I do a podcast as well because can't have enough podcasts. As a white person, you can't have enough white people. So I have the Argon bin where we talk about pop culture stuff sometimes and sometimes bins.
Bins.
Sometimes bins.
Honestly, I didn't know that you had a podcast. I had no idea. I don't know where I've been.
Where you been?
I think I missed that.
Where you been?
I just share it sometimes, and other times I'm like it doesn't exist. So
There you go. Yeah.
you have to catch it as an enigma.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've never spruced it on any of our podcasts before. You've only talked about your Twitch, so I had no idea.
Is it up on a podcast service? No. Is it up on YouTube? No. You just have to catch it live. I'm not even going to tell you what time.
Oh,
You just have to be there.
so it's nowhere.
Yeah,
It's just on Twitch Live.
It's
chaos.
chaos. That's what it is, and I love
Right.
it like that.
Okay.
But yeah, twitch.tv/ArgonTV to follow and catch it at some point, maybe.
And yeah, if you want to check out our other podcasts, Will and I have currently been doing a catch up back to a very old previous format that we did years ago when I first moved. And yeah, we're back to that. We've done 5 weeks in a row. Tomorrow, or this weekend at least, will be the 6th. So we have to do this again. But yeah, you can catch that also on youtube.com/each to their own. But if you want the video version, you have to jump on our super sexy little Patreon. So jump over to patreon.com/each to their own. Just a couple of dollars will get you into our super secret Discord where you can access all of those.
Absolutely.
So come check us out. Come support us. Goes to a good cause. It gets me lights. It gets us things.
cause.
well, not a good cause, but our cause.
Not the best cause, but a decent cause.
Yes, this is the part of the podcast where it falls apart.
Yeah.
Because I try and wrap it up and it doesn't. So
Yeah.
Just while you're listening to those catch-ups, just imagine a little Ben sometimes just sitting in the Discord on
Just
mute,
listening.
doing some work, just listening.
or driving over to Josh's house.
Yeah.
Or driving over to Josh's house. Just
while
imagine
it's all
that.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. But stop imagining it because this podcast is over. You don't have to, you can imagine something else now. What are you
That's right.
imagining? Tell us. Right now. Just tell us. We're going to leave you space. You can tell us. Oh, wow. Oh.
That's pretty cool. I wasn't
Nice.
expecting that one.
A little bit dirty, Dolphin Pants. But that's all the what if we need to talk about until the show comes back at some point. No idea when. It could be next year. It could be the year after.
2027.
Okay, that's Ben's tip. What do you think, Josh?
2027. 2025, I think.
Interesting.
Or 4 or 5.
I'm going to go with March 2023. I think we got a year break and then we'll be back.
I love that I started it off as a joke and it gradually got more accurate.
Yeah.
We got to March.
My reasoning is that if it's phase 4, they'll do a couple of years of phase 4 and then they'll
we
rip
get
out
8
that.
projects a year. They've got more than enough material after 1 year.
All right.
We're fine.
Yeah, okay.
They can make a whole what if season based on what came out this year. There's so much stuff.
20 hours of content already. So.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, fine. Whatever.
It's not phase 1, buddy. That was a weird way of saying that. I couldn't be a voice actor. Buddy. Just call me Sebastian Stan. Don't call me that. I've been Will.
I've been Josh.
I've been Ben.